Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 8. We are going to presenting to you assessing productive skills. And presenters today are me myself, Binti Raifatu Siam. I will be presenting the first part, and then the next part will be presenting by Arnis Stiningsi and Ananda Dewi Lestari. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Speaking and writing skills are called productive skills. They are crucial as they give students the opportunity to practice real-life activities in the classroom. These two skills can be used as parameter to check how much the learner have learned. Teaching speaking is vital unless someone is learning English purely for academic reason and does not intend to communicate in English, which is quite rare. Good command on speaking skill develop a real sense of progress among learners and boost their confidence. Teaching writing is also important because written communication is a basic life skill. Students may need to take notes, fill in forms, and write letters, report stories, etc. Many need to fill in detailed questionnaire relating to health, education, and employment. Sufficient ability of writing skill give one the confidence and mark his expertise on a particular language. Going to discuss first is speaking skills. English occupies an important position in Indonesian educational system as a foreign language. English is learned and tested at Indonesian school. English teaching in Indonesia aims primarily to serve the instrumental function, that is, to serve as a future orientation to obtain jobs, to gain knowledge in the field of science and technology, and most importantly, to build an open-minded attitude toward cultural differences. There are many challenges in the assessment of oral skill in the second language, including defining language proficiency, avoiding cultural biases, and attending validity. Assessment of speaking skill often lacks for behind the importance given to teaching the skill in the curriculum. Several factors also contribute to the low quality of speaking assessment, as some studies show that teachers are lacking of knowledge on how to assess their students due to the poor training conducted in Indonesia. The teachers are either reluctant to test oral ability or lack of confidence in the validity of their assessment. If the teacher are lack knowledge on how to assess their students' speaking performance, their competence in teaching are so far from effective. So, speaking types. There are five basic types of speaking. The first is imitative. This type of speaking requires the test taker to copy a word, phrase, or sentence. Pronunciation in the main aspect of the assessment, although grammar also takes part as the scoring criteria. We need to be highlighted in imitative speaking is that the communicative competence of the language is not essential. They need to acquire some information and then produce it orally without having to add extra explanation. What comes out from them is solely the information they hear. The second is intensive. Unlike imitative, intensive speaking does not emphasize on pronunciation or phonological aspects. Understanding meaning is need to respond certain tests, but the interaction with the counterpart is minimal. The activity simple is reading aloud, sentence and dialogue completion. The third is responsive. Authenticity in a conversational is important. Therefore, the speaker is stimulated to speak promptly. To respond a short conversation, making a simple request command is a kind of activity that belongs to this type of speaking. And the fourth is interactive. The load and complexity of the sentences in the major difference between responsive and interactive speaking. The number of the speaker also matter as sometimes need more than two people in the conversation. And the fifth is extensive. Extensive speaking involve a wide range of speech production. Also, the speaker will need to interact with counter speakers, which could be answering question, making discussion. It can be said that extensive speaking is the ultimate speaking skill that requires strong language component. So how to assess speaking? assessment on speaking can be very judgmental issues in which people tend to relate on native or non-native speakers on the basis pronunciation. Additionally, in 1999 viewed that speaking requires someone to be linguistically competent in the term of well articulating the sound, having sufficient vocabulary, and mastering structural or grammatical components. To speak also need functional competence, which means answering questions completely and logically. Another competence is strategic competence, in which the speaker is able to use repairing strategies when the conversation breaks down. And the last one is sociolinguistically and cultural competence. It demands the speaker to use the language appropriately to the context. This theory then developed as the criteria of speaking test assessment. However, the design of speaking assessment may vary depending on the type of speaking assessment. Then, what should to be tested? The first is grammar. Test takers are assessed on how to control its usage within sentences, to construct to use it appropriately and accurately, and to avoid grammatical errors in speaking. And the second is vocabulary. The range, precision, and the usage of vocabulary featured in the conversation used by test taker indicate the level of how proficiency they are. And the next is comprehension. Understanding the context of conversation and able give appropriate response according to the question. And the next is fluency. The language fluency indicates that the production of speech in a conversation in well delivered, have confidence in delivering speech, and able to respond specific theme without many hesitation in choosing words. And the next, of course, pronunciation. Pronunciation deals with how often errors in pronunciation occurs and how the pronunciation aspect interpret the communication are the criteria of the assessment. The next is tasks. Tasks deal with finishing the command given during the speaking task. Like all test scores, speaking score must be dependable, fair, and above all useful for intended purposes. To ensure speaking skill assessment is trustworthy, there are factors that should come into consideration. The first is practically. The first principle of making language assessment is practically. Before deciding a test, we need to analyze how practical the test is to be used, considering the time constraints of running and interpreting the score of the test, budget limitation, and facilities. And the second is validity. Consistently accurate measurement must be provided to assign a valid task. It has to measure what should be measured by including all irrelevant variables to be tested. When speaking skill is tested, making SI is not a valid test as it failed to provide information of the test taker's speech production. In the result, it might not bring about the real test taker's ability. In accordance to types of speaking, test designers should design what kind of speaking types would be tested as it influences the design of assessment. Using interview tests for imitative speaking may lead to invalidity of assessment. And the next is reliability. The need of consistent scoring measurement is very important to make a test reliable. In addition, clear rubric and scoring criteria is also a must. Sometimes a reliable test might not be a valid test. However, a test designer should struggle to keep reliable tests as valid as possible. As a need of reliable scoring system is unavoidable in speaking tests, before conducting speaking tests, test taker must prepare the standard of scoring system. The item on it should represent all aspects of what are be assessed from the student. The weight of the score must be printed clearly on the form as well to make sure each student ability is well presented. During the test, the standard scoring system will be used to record student work. Without a good scoring system, it is hardly possible to have a reliable result of the test. And the fourth is authenticity. It refers to a contextual language or language in use. Students are asked to represent something related to their values. In the case, the language is effect is authentic. One goal of the language testing is backwash effect. It tells both teacher and learners of the effect of the learning and teaching. As it's important, therefore, this issue should also be explored in a designing test. This is the example of developing assessment for speaking. The first, we have to consider the usage of assessment. The assessment is designing to assess students' extensive speaking skill. The result of this task will decide whether the test taker pass or fail the speaking subject. And for assessment instruction, for example, in this task, the instruction given is as follows. The first student are required to perform 10 minutes oral presentation, which consists of 8 minutes of presentation and 2 minutes of discussion time. Topic for presentation is free. Student can pick any themes that interest them. During discussion time, presenter has to lead the discussion to make sure it's not out of topic. B. Presentation is delivered by using PowerPoint on overhead projector. The media is provided by the student. Need to prepare the material. Scoring criteria sheet is given to knowledge student about the skill going to be assessed. And the last is due to the large number of students, the test will be held in 2 times meeting. Student might choose to deliver their presentation on the first or the second meeting. The turn is not based on alphabetical order but student willingness. And for scoring assessment, Brown contend that provide effective assessment, there are 4 rules that need to establish. Specify criterion, give appropriate tasks, present maximum output, and set practical and reliable scoring procedures. For the assessment, the table on oral presentation criteria below is going to be used to evaluate student performance. Its criterion is designed to ease teacher to score student presentation. It is also practical as teachers only need to put ticks on the appropriate score presented in. The criteria used to evaluate student performance are based on those developed. He suggested there are tests list are 6 criteria to assess speaking skill. There are pronunciation, fluency, grammar, vocabulary, discourse, features, and task accomplishment. In addition, presentation skill checklist will be added to oral presentation assessment criteria. However, the point is not more than 20% of overall score to maintain the validity of assessment, which focuses on speaking skill. Okay, that's all from me. And the next will be presented by my friend on assessing writing.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Arni Sweseningse. Nice to meet you to share the topic about how to assess productive skill. After my friend discussed with you about how to assess speaking skill, now my turn to share with you about how to assess writing skill. As we know, writing is considered a productive skill because the writer creates a new language and doesn't only interpret existing information. In order to know well about assessing writing skill, we have to learn the genre of written language type. The type or the genre of written language are divided into academic writing, job-relating writing, and the last, personal writing. Academic writing is the formal style of writing used in universities and scholarly publication. And the example of academic writing, such as report essays and then composition, academic journal, thesis, dissertation. And then what about the second genre of written language? Job relating writing. Job relating writing, you can also find the example by phone message, letter, email, and then job evaluation and the others. And the last of the type of written language is personal writing, that also known as reflective writing, that is not based on research on the topic, but centers on our opinions, talk and our experiences. Take for example, shopping list, and then financial document, medical report, or immigration document. Well, after we have discussed the genre of writing and also the example, now we come to how to know how to assess writing. To understand how to assess writing skill, we have to understand the different type of writing performance. There will be imitative, intensive, and then responsive and extensive. The fourth of the type of the writing performance will be discussed together right now. Okay, now we will invite you to share together related to the signing, assessment task, imitative writing performance. Talking about designing assessment tasks, imitative writing, we can design assessment tasks by copying. There is nothing innovative or modern about directing a test taker to copy letters or words. The test taker will see something like the following, handwriting letters, words, and also punctuation marks. The second that we can also do to design assessment tasks, imitative writing is listening close selection tasks. This task combines dictation with a written script that has relatively frequent, and the test sheet provides a list of missing words from which the test taker must select. The purpose of this test is not to test spelling, but to give practice in writing. To increase the difficulty, the list of words can be deleted, but then the spelling may become an obstacle. And then the third, how to design is by picture cue tasks. Familiar pictures are displayed and test takers are told to write the word that the picture represents. What about if we try also use form completion tasks? As we know, a variation on pictures is the use of a simple form like registration application that asks for name, address, phone number, and other data. Assuming, of course, that prior classroom instruction has focuses on filling on such a form, this task become an appropriate assessment of simple tasks such as writing one's name and address. The other task that we can use to design writing assessment by converting numbers and abbreviation to words. Also, we can use spelling task and detecting phoneme, grapheme, correspondence. Spelling test. In traditional old-fashioned spelling test, the teacher dictates a simple list of words, one word at a time, and then followed by the word in a sentence repeated again, with a pause for test taker to write the words. Scoring emphasizes correct spelling, and then we can help to control for listening errors by choosing words that the student have encountered before, words that have spoken or heard in their class. The other way for the task to design about imitative writing is by picture cue tasks. Pictures are displayed with the objective on focusing on familiar words whose spelling may be unpredictable. Items are chosen according to the objective of the assessment, but this format is an opportunity to present some challenging words and word pair like book, book, read, bit, bite, and the others. In this case, have the similar sound to spell but have different writing. Still to find another task, how to design assessment writing, talk about imitative writing, we also can use multiple choice technique. What this actually we can do, we can presenting words and phrases in the form of multiple choice tasks. risk crossing over into the domain of assessing reading. But if these items have follow-up writing component, they can serve as formative reinforcement of spelling convention. They might be more challenging with the addition of homonym. Maybe the test taker will read, choose the word with the correct spelling to fit the sentence, then write the word in the space provided. And then one sentence stated, written, he washed his hand with blah blah blah. There will be the option, the answer, A, B, C, D, and the words that have different writing and meaning, but have similar sound to spell. Well, that's all about designing assessment writing tasks, imitative writing, and for the next of writing performance will be presented by my friend Ananda Dewi Lestari. Thank you.